Charlotte. All that I'm feeling that was cliched, it was mediocre, and it is interesting. Right now in an Isekai era, I don't know what you guys feel about that, but I'm now way aware of this new shows about Isekai with magic, Isekai with waifu, Isekai with cliched conflicts, and Isekai with those prosaic romances. So, besides catching up on those sequel series every week, I'm now trying to find some old flashy series from the so-called SuperPower era. That's why I've just watched Charlotte. I started with medium expectations, planning to kill some time since the reviews were just average. Then I found I was wrong. Holy crap! It's so refreshing that I feel my soul has been purified! This series starts with a guy who can possess others for 5 seconds, Yu, the protagonist, and tells a story about responsibility, growth, and redemption. Yu's setup is pretty interesting as opposed to those stereotypical protagonists who've always been fellows of justice waving the banner of morality high. He's a selfish, contemptible pretty guy. He used his superpower to possess a truck driver and put a school beauty in danger, then he pretended to be a hero and rescued her, completely disregarding the driver's safety. He also used the same method that Yamanaka Ino used in the tuning exam, possessing top students to memorize their answers. Basically, this is a normal high school guy. We can see in him the little evils that more or less exist in every juvenile. And so, just in time, the heroine paired with the Legion of Justice. They first secretly record proof of Yu's crime and caught him. Yu was finally moved by the culture and the stick, and joined the heroine's legion by transferring to her school later. Charlotte's first episode absolutely cannot be called stunning, but to be honest, it still has impact and freshness, just not enough. In Charlotte, the government and authorities are willing to scour everywhere in the world to find those kids with superpowers, and then capture them for cruel human experimentation in order to develop technology and strengthen national power. Aside from the fact that this makes the scientists seem like pure villains and the experiment seems utterly foul, the Japanese government finally possessed some power that could deal with superpowers in a Japanese anime. In order to protect superpower kids from the authorities, a special school was established, the one the main characters now attend. They aim to find those kids and protect them by ordering them to transfer to this special school as much as possible, which is what they did to Yu, whom we've just mentioned. A slightly sinister male lead, a female lead with a really cool way of talking, and a mysterious school that can fight against the authorities, all going up against a legion of mad scientists and statesmen. I'd go so far as to say that this setup is attractive, but the part of the story that follows was absolutely horrible. In the next time, almost everyone forgot this exploitable opening and started a prosaic, meaningless 5-episode plot about living in a couldn't be more ordinary school life of going to class mixed with casually accepting some simple commission. And to keep it off, they're just spying, abducting, camping, abducting, flying, abducting, star chasing, abducting, and eating. That's it. This plot developments absolutely completely have nothing to do with the main storyline except for strengthening the stereotype that scientists and authorities are all fair villains and the protagonists are all saints. The problem with this one is that the plot and character arcs building up to those latter events were so meaningless and boring. So boring. In fact, that by the time the attractive part finally happened, I'd almost given up on the series. So they started pushing things from episode 6 onwards, serving the plot twist by suddenly killing the Yu sister. Screw! This immediately slapped the sleepy audience awake. Yu's sister was awakened someday with a superpower called
Debacle.
See how much you can imagine just about this wording. My first thought was that it was a power like Balagon's from Bleach, the number 2 Espada under Ice and Sasuke, whose ability could rule anything, collapsing the very existence of all structures. Or maybe it was some kind of Shinra Tensei from Naruto, which possesses an exorbitant power that could destroy an entire metropolis. So, what happened when her sister's debacle power activated? Well, when she was in danger, the power automatically triggered due to her uncontrollable fear. First, the environment around her collapsed, creating obstacles that block her escape. Then, the power culminated in a concentrated outburst right underneath her, dealing a fatal blow. Anyway, you could ask for a more convenient superpower if you wanted to commit suicide, and so her sister just died thanks to her own superpower. After this show, they continued continued feeding the audience cliched plots until the audience got exhausted again. Then they slapped them awake again by throwing plot twists, repeating this process several times, and then finally somehow got to the end of the series. Yu, the protagonist, caps off the series by very casually absorbing everyone's abilities, single-handedly saving the world, and somehow even reviving his dead sister. You may be thinking, that kind of summary is awful, can't you just explain everything that happened? Why can't the protagonist absorb all the abilities? In fact, that was exactly what I was feeling when the show suddenly managed to come to an end. The story genuinely jumped forward in extreme jogging way, somehow stumbling to the ending. The first 9 episodes constantly portrayed the kind of normal story that we've mentioned, but in episode 9, this show suddenly switched to a huge time travel drama. The last scene showed Yuna and Dave with a hearing at a live house where he somehow recalled memories of a past life just by listening to the singer. Then, in the very next scene, the storytelling jerked in a completely new style. Yu actually has an older brother who is the headmaster of this mysterious high school and is the central figure in the fight against the authorities. You can remember him simply because someone erased his memory. Meanwhile, Yu's true superpower is wresting others' abilities by possessing others. His brother's ability is time travel, which has a severe side effect, deteriorating vision. The reason he can no longer activate this power is that he has used it so many times over the years that he eventually went completely blind, since the ability is dependent on the user's sight. You guys might have figured out how the protagonist saved his sister. He just resetted his brother's ability, traveled to the past, and saved her by taking her ability before she activated her laughable superpower. But you know, I feel completely exhausted by this show when I realize this. It's like the producers approached the story with a single formula. Get sleepy? Kill someone. Get sad? Bring them back to life. Get happy? Kill someone again. Feeling unhappy? Throw in some daily life. Fuck me. It finally seemed like we are getting a happy ending. But guys, take a look at who the writer is. Meta-Jun. How could he give us a happy ending? It's well known that to him, writing tragedies is rewarding himself, and writing happy endings is rewarding audience. He's always swaying himself in between rewarding audience or rewarding himself. Finally, Yu was left handicapped and lost his memory again, and Mate was killed by the tobacco superpower again. And this time, it was launched by the protagonist after he wrested it from his sister again. This proves that this damn ability has absolutely no effects on enemies. It just kills the user's side, and twice. I mean twice! How fucking ridiculous is that? When we just supposed Charlotte and Angel Beats, which was Meta-Jun's earlier series, we were way less emotionally attached to Charlotte's plots, despite it having a more interesting setup in the beginning and throwing more plot twists at a non-stop pace. And the biggest problem with it was its pace. Though it's only 13 episodes long, that's no excuse for the main arc's pacing to be so rushed that they completely lost any sense of subtlety. Think about it. They used episode 1 for setup, episode 6 for a major death, and only the last 4 episodes for the main story. That left 7 full episodes completely unrelated to the central plot. Let's take a look at what happens in these precious 7 episodes. Spying, abducting, camping, abducting, flying, abducting, star chasing, abducting, eating cherry, eating stew, eating instant noodles, eating omelette rice, eating pocky, eating tempura, and playing fucking baseball, which is the tenacious feature of Meta-Jun's anime. This horrible plot arrangement not only destroyed the storytelling, but also greatly diminished the character's charisma. As I said, Yu, the protagonist, was first introduced as a distinctive, slightly sinister juvenile, but suddenly turned to a standard, responsible protagonist, the kind of you see in countless other anime as early as episode 2. Then he went on to complete a set of hard commission, led an amateur team to defeat a professional one. Just when everyone thought he was a reliable, brilliant person, he suddenly turned back into a dumb asshole again. That status didn't last long either. He instantly found his virtue again, and suddenly fucked the world, wrested everyone's abilities, and dealt with all problems single-handedly. Besides, plot holes and logic gaps were fucking everywhere. Yu's actual ability was revealed to be resting, and there was even a line of dialogue confirming that previous characters indeed lost their abilities because Yu had possessed them, all while he was ignorant about his power superpower. But then, how come this glasses guy could still use his ability after being possessed by you? That makes no sense. And why doesn't you even heal his injured right eye? Why was he left handicapped even though he's absorbed a healing ability? Let me tell you why. Because having one eye is cool. One eye plus a Kaido style is cooler. And one eye plus Kaido style plus going over to the dark side is the coolest. What was he supposed to save the mage who died from the debacle by healing his eye and launching the time travel? Please, he wouldn't sacrifice such a cool character setting. To encapsulate what I've got while I trying to find some old flashy series from the so-called superpower era in this Isekai era, I've got superpower with magic, superpower with waifu, superpower with cliched conflicts, and superpower with those perfect romances. This last scene, whether intentionally or unintentionally, paid tribute to Yuri and Hinata's scenes in Angel Beats, which was one of my favorite scenes ever to come out in anime. But my feelings are quite complicated after seeing the scene down like this. Like this! Anyway, let me set it to the same music to end this video. 一人でも行くよたとえ辛くても君と見た夢は必ず持ってくよ Hi, Tosh this. Nice to meet you. This is my first foray into making an English video. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and 关注14关注超爽超爽超爽 I'll bring more interesting anime content later. Alright, see you next time.